They said they'd try, said they'd do better, promised they'd never hurt you the same way again. But they did, again and again. You waited, believed, forgave, held on, and they stayed exactly the same. Stop waiting for them to change. Some people don't grow. They rot. They decay behind charming smiles. They fester beneath apologies. They practice performance, but never reflection. They are not stuck. They are invested in staying who they are because it works for them. Growth requires discomfort. It requires shame. It requires looking in the mirror and not flinching. And them, they don't do mirrors. They do masks. Let me tell you something no one dares to say out loud. Some people will choose being right over being real. They'll choose ego over evolution, control over connection, power over peace. Because change threatens the entire illusion they built. You want to know why they never change? Because deep down, they never had to. Someone always picked up the pieces. Someone always forgave. Someone always explained away the mess. Someone like you. They don't change because life never made them. Why would they? They lie and get another chance. They manipulate and get sympathy. They hurt you and watch you blame yourself. That's not consequence. That's reinforcement. Here's the psychology behind it. They're not incapable. They're unwilling. They know what they're doing. They rehearsed it for years. They know the exact words to say, the perfect tone, the right timing, the crocodile tears. It's a game, and you're the board. Change requires one thing they refuse to face: accountability. But accountability feels like death to ego. To them, admitting fault feels like annihilation, like collapse, like losing the only illusion they ever loved: control. They would rather destroy relationships than their self-image. They would rather break you than break the cycle. They'll burn the bridge, then complain you're not swimming back. You ever notice how they always almost get it? They almost apologize, almost understand, almost reflect, but just enough to keep you hoping. Never enough to grow. It's not growth. It's grooming. Let me say that again. It's not growth. It's grooming. They adapt just enough to survive your boundaries, but not enough to respect them. They don't evolve. They perform evolution, and it works until it doesn't, until you wake up. Let me ask you, how many times have you told yourself, this time it'll be different? They are just wounded. They just need time. They didn't mean it. And how many times did the cycle repeat? Same lie, different excuse, same outcome. You thought you were being patient, but what you were really doing was delaying the grief, grieving the truth that they are who they are, and they like it that way. Here's what you must understand. Some people don't heal because their sickness gets them what they want. They don't want love. They want loyalty. They don't want truth. They want obedience. They don't want intimacy. They want control. And guess what? To them, control feels like love. Power feels like connection. They think if they can own you, they must matter to you. It's twisted. It's toxic. But it's their truth. They don't know how to receive love, only how to extract it. They don't give. They harvest. They harvest your empathy, your forgiveness, your silence, and then they call it peace. You're not in a relationship. You're in an emotional hostage situation, and you keep trying to negotiate with the kidnapper. You think they'll change when you explain it better. Love them harder. Stay longer. Sacrifice more. But they don't change. They adapt to your tolerance. The longer you stay, the more they learn what they can get away with, and are always learning, not to love you, but to manage you. Manage your reactions, your doubts, your hope. You think you're helping them heal, but you're helping them hide. You're covering their dysfunction with your devotion. You become the fig leaf for their unfinished shadow. Let me tell you something brutal. If someone can hurt you repeatedly and feel nothing, it's not because they're damaged. It's because they're detached. from themselves, from reality, from responsibility. They've outsourced accountability to you, and you picked it up like a martyr. But here's what martyrs forget. No one builds statues of the ones who bled quietly. You don't get a medal for enduring mistreatment. You don't get healed by explaining pain to the person who caused it. You just stay stuck, talking to a brick wall, calling it closure. You keep asking, why won't they change? But the real question is, why do I keep expecting them to? You're not waiting for them to grow. You're waiting for them to become who you needed them to be. So the story makes sense. So the pain feels worth it. So your love doesn't feel wasted. But it doesn't work that way. They're not a project. They're a pattern. And the longer you stay, the more that pattern becomes yours. You still there? Good. Let's go deeper. You think change is about willpower. It's not. It's about identity. And here's the truth. People don't fear change. They fear ego death. See, the moment they admit they were wrong, the mask shatters. The moment they say, I hurt you, they have to feel what it means to hurt someone. And they're not built for that kind of weight. They constructed a self-image so fragile, so carefully glued together, that even the slightest crack would collapse everything. So instead, they deny, they deflect, they blame, because admitting fault means burning down the house they live in, and they'd rather let you suffocate than open a window. You want to know why they can't say, I'm sorry, and mean it? Because sorry means they're not perfect, means they failed, means they're not the hero in their own narrative, and that is intolerable. They need to be right, always, even if it means rewriting history, even if it means gaslighting you into insanity, even if it means turning your pain into drama. Because if they're not right, they feel invisible, and that's their deepest fear. You think they're arrogant? No, they're insecure. So deeply insecure, they can't handle being human. So they pretend to be gods, untouchable, unbreakable, always justified. They don't change because their false self is their only armor. And you keep poking at it, thinking if you just say it the right way, with enough compassion, they'll finally wake up. But what if I told you they're wide awake? They know what they're doing. They just don't care enough to stop. You mistake confusion for ignorance. But this isn't confusion. It's strategy. They pretend they don't understand. Because if they did, they'd have to change. And change means responsibility. Responsibility means guilt. And guilt means pain. Pain they've buried for years, decades, generations. You think you're fighting them, but really, you're fighting their defense mechanisms, their childhood traumas, their inherited shame. It's not one person you're battling, it's a fortress, and you're one voice, screaming at a wall built brick by fear. And guess what? You're not the first to try. You're not the first to love them enough to hope. But no one gets through, not because they're unreachable, but because they've locked the doors from inside. You can't save someone who's at war with reality and winning. They built an entire religion where they are the god, and you are the worshiper. Your pain is blasphemy. Your truth is treason. Try to hold them accountable. You're the villain. Set a boundary. You're selfish. Call them out. You're crazy. They weaponize your compassion, twist it into guilt, then use that guilt to control you, and you call it love. But it's not love. It's emotional colonization. They move in, rearrange your beliefs, redefine your reality, and then blame you for bleeding when they break things. They say things like, I never said that. You're too sensitive. Why are you bringing up the past? You always think the worst of me. Can't we just move on? Translation: stop making me look at the part myself I refuse to see. That's the core. That's the thing they're protecting with every lie, every manipulation, every outburst. The shadow self, the ugly truth, that underneath the persona. They are scared, ashamed, empty. But instead of healing it, they hide it, And instead of facing it, they punish you for reminding them it exists. Let me say something hard. Some people don't change because being broken gives them power. Victimhood becomes currency. Sadness becomes strategy. They weaponize pain like a scalpel and cut you just enough to keep you close. They call it opening up, but it's a test. Can you handle their damage? Will you stay if they bleed all over you? Will you sacrifice you so they don't have to grow? If yes, you're in. You've passed a loyalty test. But loyalty to them doesn't mean love. It means possession. You're not a partner. You're a mirror, and mirrors don't talk back. You exist to validate their false self. The moment you challenge it, you're discarded, ghosted, punished, rewritten as the enemy in their mental autobiography. You think the pain will change them? It won't. You think losing you will wake them up? It won't. You think rock bottom will humble them? It won't. Because people like this don't hit rock bottom. They decorate it. They turn it into a throne. Call it destiny. Blame the world. They'll cry about the storm while holding the match. They'll scream they're drowning while punching holes in the boat. And they'll beg for your help right after they tie you to the anchor. Stop trying to rescue them. They don't want saving. They want a witness, an audience, a savior they can crucify when the script demands it. Let me be clear. Not everyone who refuses to change is a monster, but everyone who refuses to change will become a black hole, sucking in everyone who gets too close. And you deserve better than orbiting someone else's self-destruction. You were not born to be someone's emotional rehab center. You were not born to be the fallout shelter for someone else's war. You were not born to bleed for closure. So now what? You've seen the truth. You've watched them lie, manipulate, twist, and deflect. You've begged, reasoned, explained. You gave them clarity, compassion, chances, and they spit it back in your face. Here's the hardest pill to swallow. You are not their turning point. You are not the one who'll save them. You are not the miracle they'll wake up for. You are not the reason they'll suddenly grow a conscience. Because people don't change in your pain. They only change when their own pain becomes unbearable. And some people have a very high pain tolerance, especially when they can numb it with denial, pride, and power. You've been trying to love them into evolution, but love doesn't fix what the ego refuses to admit. You can show the mirror, but they have to choose to look, and they won't, because looking means breaking. And some people would rather stay broken than be exposed. So let's stop pretending. They're not almost ready. They're not trying their best. They're not just scared. They're choosing this. Every lie is a choice. Every manipulation is a strategy. Every excuse is an escape hatch they install themselves. They are not the victim of their own behavior. They are the architect of it. And you've been standing in the rubble, holding blueprints to a future they never intended to build. Let that sink in. The truth is, some people don't grow up. They just grow better at justifying their immaturity. They use age as armor. They weaponize wisdom quotes they don't live by. They talk about healing while bleeding on everyone around them. They become masters of performance of growth. But behind the mask, they're the same angry, scared, manipulative child they've always been. Only now they know how to hide it better. And you're exhausted, not from helping, but from constantly explaining reality to someone committed to fantasy. You keep thinking, if I leave, maybe they'll finally get it. Let me save you the heartbreak. They won't. They won't have an epiphany. They'll have a narrative, one where you were the villain, the ungrateful one, the betrayer, the weak one who gave up. Because the truth would cost them too much. They need to believe you were the problem so they can stay the same. So you have two choices now. Keep trying to wake the dead, mourn the person you thought they were, and live. Because here's the plot twist no one tells you. You don't need their apology to heal. You don't need closure to move on. You don't need permission to let go. The peace you're looking for, it doesn't come from them. It comes from finally choosing you, choosing your sanity, your dignity, your future, even if it means walking alone, especially if it means walking alone. Let them rot in the version themselves they refuse to outgrow. Let them worship the ego that keeps them stuck. Let them gaslight a mirror until it shatters in silence. That's not your battle anymore. You're not the savior. You're the survivor. And sometimes, the most radical act of love is to leave, not to punish, but to protect. Protect your soul, your truth, your story. Because, while they never change, you did. You saw through it. You broke the spell. You chose reality over illusion, clarity over chaos, freedom over fantasy. And that's power. So walk away, not in anger, not in revenge, but in peace. Because you've already won the war. By refusing to keep fighting battles that only end in your own destruction. Let them tell the world their version. Let them rewrite the story. You don't need to correct the record. Your life will speak for itself. And when they look back, they'll see the one person who was real, who was honest, who tried, and they'll realize they didn't lose someone who gave up. They lost someone who gave everything.